other taxation is written as taxation, so then you
Right.
it's naturally whatever, but estimate taxation.
Yeah. But so okay, so there's two main jobs. So okay, it's an intergovernmental council consisting of 6 people.
Okay.
It's the mayor, 2 city council members, a park board, an elected member of the park board, and then two residents that are elected directly. So I'm running for one of those 2 seats.
Okay.
So then those 6 people, and the purpose of this council is to set the maximum property tax levy for the city and the park board, and to approve city bonding questions so that which is when we issue debt to fund infrastructure investment. So the reason it exists, which helps explain what it is that we have 2 property tax levies, one for the city and one for the park board. And they're separate taxing authorities. So the park board has the legal authority to say we're raising our property tax levy, as does the city. And so we have this intergovernmental body so that it was like these 2 different government entities could come together and discuss with some oversight. Well, when we add your property tax increase and your property tax increase, is that too much of a burden on residents of Minneapolis, or is it not enough money to fund services, and should it be higher? And so it used to be that the libraries also had a seat on the BET, because the libraries had their own separate taxing authority, but now the libraries are managed by the county. And so these are the 2 city levies. So it's kind of funny because we have this body that's like, let's make sure that everyone's property tax burden is appropriate, but then it doesn't include the county or the school district or the Met Council. So when you add up all your property taxes, we're not even overseeing the majority of them. So it's a bit funny, but we have it, and it's important because, like, if the BET says, well, you can only raise the levy 5% this year, then the city would probably have to make a bunch of cuts to fit within that budget. Or if the BET says you can raise it 10 or 15%, then maybe some people would be faced with property tax increases they couldn't really afford. So that's kind of the impact of it, is like, how much leeway are we giving the city and the park board to raise the revenues that they want to fund their programs and stuff?
So you guys are like, I want to repeat back what I think I'm hearing you say. Like, it sounds like you're saying like the BET like works to like figure out what like the tax rate, doesn't feel like the right word, but like what level of property tax residents pay, and you are doing that in collaboration with like, well, how much money does the city need, while also trying to like make sure that you're not overburdening residents. Like, you're trying to find whatever the sweet spot is.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Like, what's an acceptable property tax increase to fund services?
Okay. Okay. So like, why are you running for the board?
So I've been doing tax policy work for and other kinds of like econ policy, social policy work for over 10 years, but with taxes being a big part of it.
Yep.
And basically I was working in progressive economic policy, like, doing labor stuff, financial sector regulation, like how could we have an economy that, serves people better and creates more like equitable society, in a broad sense. And as I learned more and more about our tax code, I came to see taxes as this underlying metaphor for how we care for one another. And it's like, we can talk about, how the healthcare system fails people, how the education system fails people, how the housing system fails people. But there's this underlying factor of like, how much do we take our collective wealth and reinvest it in our collective well-being? And that's like, it's a rough measure, but it is a pretty good measure of how much effort we're putting in to improve our collective well-being. And so I got interested in taxes as this metaphor for social care, or societal effort at caring for one another. And then over time, I got more and more interested in state and local government, because I came to see that like state and local governments were the entities that implemented the things I really care about: education, childcare, healthcare, infrastructure, all that stuff. Even if some of it's funded from the federal government, it's all implemented by state and local governments.
Right.
And so then I got more interested in state and local governments. 5 years ago, I moved to Minneapolis to work for a coalition of labor unions and grassroots organizations that does tax and budget policy at the state level. And then I've just been involved in Minneapolis and in Minnesota politics since I got here, and I've made a lot of friends and community in those spaces. And then Sam Priest-Stinson, who's a great representative to the BET right now, decided not to run for a second term. And so I talked with a bunch of people I know, and I was like, well, I've been more and more interested in the city specifically and learning more about that stuff. And so that was kind of when I decided to get in the race, because there was another guy who got in that I didn't think would be really good. And I now have a good relationship with that guy, but I still think I'd be better than him.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. I want to go back to what you were saying about like you understanding like taxes as a metaphor for like care. Can you say like what does that mean like for you? Like can you give me an example of like how that or how you see that show up and like what that means for you and how you want what you want to do differently so that like you're moving toward the vision that you want to see?
Yeah, well, at the biggest picture level, I do a presentation for work regularly that is like one of the things we show is just levels of public investment in the U.S. compared to other countries. And we spend like 30% less of our collective wealth on public goods and services, on like public well-being than other developed nations. So like just as a first order, it's like, well, the U.S. we suffer from poverty, rates of poverty that other countries don't suffer from, rates of inequality that are less bad than that's worse than other countries. We die younger, we have more suicide, we have more violent crime. Like there's all these really difficult, horrendous, really social outcomes in the United States. And obviously, like just raising and spending more money isn't the only solution. There's lots of other inequities and cultural things we need to wrestle with. But it's like, well, we have these bad outcomes, unsheltered homelessness, you can go on and on. And if you just check the math, it's like, oh, well, it kind of makes sense we have these bad outcomes because we invest a lot less in giving people their basic needs that would make them more able to find their own path to, you know, joy and personhood and fulfillment and inclusion and whatever. And so that's like the very big picture feeling that like, you know, the things that we buy together when we raise money and taxes and spend it, generally they're pretty good things. Now, there's some big exceptions there. Military spending, I think, is way higher than it should be. And I think we, you know, obviously there's a robust conversation to be had about the value we get and don't get from policing. But, you know, I do think a lot of our money goes to education. A lot of it goes to healthcare. A lot of it goes to housing and social welfare programs. And those things should be more generous. We should raise the floor of the basic quality of life in our country. And that's going to take, you know, reinvestment. And also one other thing I'll say is not all of the investment that we could do is just focused on these like dire social problems. We can also invest in things that actually just improve our quality of life. Like parks are a great example, but after school programs, continuing adult education, you know, there's like, we don't do a lot of this in the United States, but like swimming pools, like we should have more things that allow us to be connected with one another and find joy with one another so that we can have a more cohesive society. And I think that, you know, the government, I mean, communities can come together and do these things, but I do think that, you know, the public sector is an important engine for those sorts of collective spaces.
I wonder, like, I think, like, and I'll say you and I talked a bit on the phone the other day, like in the lead up to this conversation, and something that we were talking about is a wealth tax.
Yeah.
You said, like, and this is something that I really want to get into because, like, I have the knowledge and the expertise and I want to really know. So you said that, like, you have you were skeptical about whether a wealth tax could work like at the city
At the
level.
city
And
level,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk about that one. That's the first part, and then the second part is like, how does that matter? Could there be like a wealth property tax if it wasn't like a wealth tax on your income?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, okay. So, one thing I'll say is that, like, it's not as progressive as a wealth tax on, like, financial investments would be, but property taxes are a wealth tax. And property ownership has been is a key, like, place where, a lot of rich people put their money and
Right.
make money and stuff like that. And so, I am
But
a
it's not taxed
defense.
at the same level, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
like,
Not,
and it's
not
like,
the same as,
or
like,
I'm sorry. It's taxed at like what I meant is like, if I regular person own a house, I'm taxed at the same rate as other person who maybe is normal but lives on Betty Makaska. It's like, well, like there should be a difference there because like your house, the value of your house is like that's more what I'm getting
the
at.
percent is the same. It's regressive, meaning as a percent of your income or of your house's value, it's the same. But a richer person's house is worth a lot more money, and they are paying usually substantial amount more in property taxes. But it's not. You're correct, 100% correct, that we don't have a steeply progressive property tax that, like, where someone whose house is like, it's not like your property taxes grow linearly with the value of your house, not exponentially like it would with income, where your income tax rate goes up with your amount of money.
Right.
Your property tax rate is probably similar regardless of how expensive your house is.
Right.
So you do pay more money, and there's a whole debate we should have, maybe another TikTok live, about progressivity, the concept of progressivity.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical of it because, I think that progressive income tax is very important, and a progressive wealth tax at the national level would be very important. But I am against this use of progressivity as a cudgel against broader regressive taxes, because when you think about it, it's like consumption, for example, like sales taxes. People will say sales taxes are regressive because a lower income person spends more of their money on taxable goods than a rich person does. First of all, that's changing. Like, consumption is getting more progressive, meaning rich people are buying a larger and larger share of all the stuff that gets bought. But also, lower income people in Minnesota, taxes and clothing groceries and clothing are not taxed.
Right.
And so, like, there's also, like, rich people spend a lot of money on clothing. They spend a lot of money on alcohol. So, like, when we avoid raising revenue from consumption because it's regressive, we might save lower income people a larger percent of their paychecks than we do rich people. But we're also saving rich people a ton of money by keeping those taxes lower. And then we have less to reinvest. And so it's just like, it's a complicated question. And at work, I bring this up with union members and grassroots organizers, and we have a debate about it. And I just think that debate is important, because if we pin all of our hopes on, like, really progressive wealth taxation, we're going to hold ourselves back from making investments in housing, healthcare, homeless services, etc., that might actually do a lot to improve the quality of our, communities and our city. So, sorry, that was like a long.
No. I appreciate that, but I do this a lot. I'm like, can I restate what I think I heard you say?
Yeah. Sorry.
I think what you're saying is like, yeah, at the national level, we need a wealth tax, but
yeah,
you are unclear. Not unclear. You don't think that could work at the city level, and maybe I'm unclear on the reason, but like, I think maybe what you're saying is like, we need, like, in the way we don't have sales tax on groceries and clothing, we maybe actually do need that at least in Minnesota.
There's an argument for that. I wouldn't go there initially. I think maybe eventually. There's a lot of other things that we don't tax now that we like in terms of consumption that we could, like lawyers and financial consultants. Like you pay taxes when you go, to the hardware store, but a rich person who spends 50 grand on a financial advisor doesn't pay sales tax on that. So there's like a lot of things that we could add to the sales tax base that would be more progressive than clothing and groceries, and I would probably start there. But to your point about wealth taxation, it's just an implementation problem at the local level. Well, it's actually not just an implementation. Largely, it's an implementation problem. Like, there's no local revenue authority that would be capable of auditing people and finding out what assets they own and how much they're worth and creating a whole system of wealth taxation that we don't even have at the national level yet. So that's the main thing. And honestly, even at the state level, like, I've been in talks with the Department of Revenue about what our progressive wealth and income tax options are, and they feel very skeptical of their ability to implement a wealth tax without help from the IRS. So at the city level, it's even that much harder because we don't have like a city Department of Revenue in the same way that the state does. Like, we piggyback off the state. And then the other problem is, it's such a small jurisdiction. Like, if you're I'm skeptical when people say, oh, people will move because of the taxes. That's generally a overstated argument. But in the case of a wealth tax, anyone with that amount of money would surely move to avoid paying taxes on it. If it was just a matter of moving to Edina, or if it was just a matter of moving to Woodbury or whatever.
Right.
So I do think that we could make our property taxes more progressive, to your earlier point, so that people with $1.5 million homes were paying not just more money total, but a higher rate on their expensive homes. That would be one way of getting at the wealth tax issue. But it is a difficult problem at the local level outside of property taxes to try and tax wealth.
Right. So it's both like a logistical challenge in that there's no mechanism for actually, you could say, well, we have a wealth tax, but it's like, okay, well, how are you going to actually go about doing that thing? And then moreover, anybody, whatever level the wealth is going to say, well, okay, I'm just going to sell my house and go to Edina and whatever, buy, right? So it's like both logistical and maybe not worth the, like, juice isn't worth the squeeze in terms of like what you get out on the other end. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But I mean, I feel it's weird. Like, I find myself often in the position of arguing like why some of these things would be difficult to pull off. It's not because I don't think they're necessary. It's just because like I'm often find myself in the position of like having to tell a lawmaker like we should pass this, and I can't tell them to do something that won't work, or else like, first of all, I won't help anyone, and second of all, I'll quickly lose whatever little bit of credibility I've accrued in my time in this kind of work. But the concentration of wealth at the top of our society is an absolutely existential crisis. And I think it's possible that it's going to get so bad and we won't have the political will or the mechanisms to expropriate that wealth quick enough that it could actually like sort of overwhelm us in some ways. And already you see how like speculative investment bubbles can crash like huge parts of the economy. That's a problem largely created by the amount of wealth that's held at the top and pushed around into different investment vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was actually that's actually something I was about to ask you about. So I was looking at your website and you have you say that you're interested in exploring the land value taxation, which would raise more money from speculative landlords. So can you talk a bit about that? Or landowners, I'm sorry, landowners.
Yeah. So land value taxation is really interesting, and Omar Fateh supports it. And actually, there's Republicans who are interested in it too, which is interesting. But so basically, a land value tax would change the basis of our property tax. And so instead of taxing people's property based on the value of the structure, you would tax it based on the value of the land. And so, like, let's say you've got three identical plots next to each other. One of them is empty or it's a parking lot. One of them's a single family home and one of them's a fourplex.
Right.
So if you tax the structure, then the empty plot has the lowest taxes, the single family home's in the middle, and then the fourplex is by far the most valuable because it creates like thousands of dollars of like, you know, of like revenue, whether it's, you know, you could live in it, but it's like, you know, it's worth a lot more because it's more units of housing, and that's ostensibly people would pay to live there, right? And so then the property tax rate on the fourplex is higher than it is on the home, and it's way higher than it is on the undeveloped land. And so our current system disincentivizes development from a tax burden perspective. And it sort of punishes people in a way who build valuable property, which is valuable because it houses people. And so land value taxation says you just tax the value of the land. Itself, and then the person who puts the land to more use gets more value out of it, gets like a lower property tax burden as a result. And so when you do this in practice, single family homes stay about the same. They don't change that much in terms of like their share of the tax burden. Yeah. But the property tax burden on apartments goes down a little bit, and the property tax burden on empty land or parking lots or like storage facilities, things like that, it goes way up. And so then that incentivizes people to like not own a used car lot on Lyndale Avenue, for example, and sell that land, you know, for someone who's going to build, you know, mixed use space like commercial and residential space or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. That like, so it's like you change the incentive structure, right? Like
you make it more expensive. Yeah. You make it more expensive to hold on to land.
Dude, I feel like is the natural like. I feel like, do business owners dislike that idea because it like if you
depends on what business you're in.
A car dealership that we're just talking about, they're like, well, how am I supposed to make and this is not me saying I care about what business owners need. That's not me, like versus people needing their housing. And so, I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, there's people who are always going to be opposed to every policy change. And I will say that like something I go into very open-eyed in this kind of work is that I think if you're elected to office, you pretty much have to expect to be mostly like considered a failure in the short term and hope that in the long term people appreciate your work. Because it's just so rare. Like, you know, they rebuilt Hennepin Avenue just like they rebuilt Bryant Avenue near me. I live in South Minneapolis. Okay. And like people are still just warming up to like the Bryant Avenue bikeway. And I like remember what Bryant Avenue was like before the bikeway, and it is so much nicer.
It's so much better. It's so much better. It's so much better.
And I know not everyone bikes, you know, and that there's like that issue and whatever. But I just think like it creates more space for people to walk, for people to ride a bike or wheel a stroller or whatever. And it's like it's not on every street, but it's on this street, and it's very, very nice, and it makes it so much easier to bike if you are a cyclist or a scooter rider or whatever. And like people just like get very angry when we implement changes. And I think people should run for office that have strongly held and closely considered ideas about how to improve things and just honestly try and stick by them and do the right thing. And I'm not saying like don't change your mind if you're confronted with overwhelming evidence to the contrary, but like a change like land value tax, you know, that could be like my entire career. If I help get that passed, people could run me out of office and slander me forever. And I'd like have to be okay with that because like I believe it would be better to incentivize more housing and a denser use of space, especially in an urban area. Like that's what a city is, in my opinion. Yeah. And, you know, people can disagree with that opinion or whatever. But I do think that, yeah. Sorry, your question was who would oppose it? It really so it's a lot of these questions are interesting because they cut across different interest groups. Like, I think developers, for example, are supportive of land value tax because it means more development that they could get their hands on. But like, yeah, there's like NIMBY type of local business owners who just don't want anything to change, and they might like come out against it. Or like car dealerships, like you said, or whatever. But there's always going to be interest groups on both sides of any issue, you know?
Right.
I do think with land value tax, though, you could build a pretty powerful coalition if you put the work in between developers, progressives who want more housing, all the YIMBY people, all the urbanist people. You know, like I think Jacob Fry could eventually be convinced to consider it. You know, someone like that. So, you know, but you know, I don't know. These things are always a huge fight, and we need permission from the state to do it. So it would be like a kind of an inside outside strategy.
Right. Right. What is the board of estimate and taxation? Is it a full-time job or is it part-time?
Oh, it's very part-time. It's like 2 meetings a month. Usually I think I might make as much as, I think it's like $5,000 a year.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Really.
So yeah, you guys come see me for a free drink.
How do you think? Another part of your policy platform that I wanted to ask you about is like, how do you think the city ought to go about raising revenue?
Okay, so great question. We only have so many options legally. So we can raise revenue from fees and charges, which is when we charge for our services or we charge like parking fees or whatever. We raise property tax revenue, sales tax revenue. And then, you know, there's aid from the state that we get some aid from the federal government. And then there's, you know, different grants and things that we can get through, I don't know, you know, I guess mostly the federal government. But so we don't have the authority without state permission to create any new taxes. And that's why the property tax goes up so regularly, is because that's the dial that we can actually twist.
Right. That's the only
sales taxes. It just depends on how much commerce people are doing in the city, and property taxes we can actually say we raise the levy, and then the levy gets distributed across the property tax base. And I do have a video about that whole thing on my Instagram if you're interested. But so that's the lever that we have to pull. And so like in the short term, the main way we can raise revenue is by raising property taxes. But I will say the other thing that we can do is look at our spending and see where can we reallocate spending or spend our dollars better to create more investment in the areas we want to see it. And, you know, obviously, like there was a robust conversation a couple of years ago about defunding the police. And I actually thought that was a good slogan. I think politically, I guess we've paid the price for it. But I really appreciated defund the police as a way of expressing that, like, we have a lot of problems in society and police are not solving them. Police are not addressing unsheltered homelessness. Police are not addressing poverty. They're not addressing lack of health care. And we're pouring all this money into our police departments that we need for other things that would make police less necessary ultimately. And so I really appreciated that part of that slogan, although now it has an infamous place in history or whatever. But so I think, like, you know, there's a lot of ways that the city spends money now that I think we could do better and get more taxpayer value for every dollar. Like what? So one big broad thing is we do a lot of things through outside contracting. So the city spends more than like over 50% more on contracted services than they do on public sector employees. So we're spending like 600 some or 700 some million dollars every budget on our contracted services, and only like 500 some on, or even less than that, on public sector employees. So it's like, you know, sometimes it makes sense, I guess, to contract with an outside firm to do some job, right? Like, and some of them are good at it, and they specialize in government contracts, and they have union workforces and stuff. And so, like, it's not all got to be done by a public sector employee. But every time you bring on one of those contracts, then the city has to manage that contract and that process. And then you're paying for that company owner's share of the profits. And you're paying for their HR, wing and their billing wing and their marketing and all these things that they do as a business that as a government entity, you could consolidate and save money on. And so when we do things through the private sector, we surrender some control of how they're done.
Right.
And then we also spend some extra money ostensibly on them making, profit. And so I think there's a lot to look at there that could be money saving. And then there's also, I think, some other ways of saving money and potentially generating revenue. And that has to do with the management of public assets. And so this is where I really agreed with one of my opponents, Bob Fine. When he was on the park board, even though if you talk to progressive people, Bob Fine's a bad guy, or at least a bad policymaker or whatever. But Bob Fine was a real estate lawyer, and he was on the park board, and his attitude was like, basically, the city and the park board should be better fiscal agents of city dollars and city assets. And so it's like, an example was like, the airport wanted to buy park board land, and they were like, can you sell us these 6 acres of land? And Bob Fine was like, I'd be a fool to sell you land. I'll trade you land. And so Bob got like 40 acres of new parkland for the 6 acres that they wanted. And over time, that has a lot more value than the money that they would have gotten from a one-time transaction. And now there's a new park on that land. And so like, that's like an example of like, or like another one would be the parks department HQ was in a building downtown, and they were renting for some lease to a private landowner or, building owner. And so they bought a new building by the river, and they put the parks HQ in there, and then they rented out the bottom floor to some business, and they were able to get out of that lease that they were paying for and generate revenue from this new tenant and live in a building that the public now owns.
Right.
And that was also now an asset that they own that like has value. And so, those are like two small examples, but I think that attitude of like, we shouldn't be cutting shitty deals on the taxpayer's behalf. Like a more politicized one is like arenas. Well, like if we're going to help some billionaire build a new arena that he's going to make millions and millions or even hundreds of millions off of, then why are we just giving him money and expecting no ownership stake in return? So like maybe we do have a role to play in incentivizing those sorts of investments, but then I want the taxpayers to benefit from that for the long haul through like either residual revenues to the city or an ownership stake or something like that. And that's another area to explore in terms of revenue generation.
Right. So it's like, what you're saying is like, yeah, our avenues for generating like new sources of revenue are very limited, but we need to look at like the way we are managing the funds. Are we managing the funds we have in the best way possible? Yeah. Right? Like, are we cutting shitty deals with landlords? Are we giving money to billionaires to build Target centers? Like it's like. No, yes. It's like, or are we like being really good stewards of the resources that we do have and putting those to the best use possible?
100%. Exactly. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
And to be honest, like I've got a lot to learn. Like I've been very like public and outspoken, like about my kind of values and framework for thinking about things as I campaign. But I have no illusions that I'm going to like storm into City Hall and like change everything about our budget. Like it's going to be a process of exploration and investigation, but I do know that I've got a lot of great partners that are going to be on the city council, no matter how the election turns out, that are very interested, that are very interested in these sorts of ideas, and that already are unearthing examples of the city not spending its dollars well, and that I'm excited to partner with to like communicate.
I'm thinking about like Robin Walmsley and the work she's been doing, right? And the work she's been doing to be like, hey, why are the police using our resources when they're not serving the people of Minneapolis.
Yes, like exactly. Robin is like the exact person I was thinking of. Katie Cashman too. I think they're really sharp on that stuff. Aisha Chugtai. And they have such a wealth of knowledge about those sorts of things. And I think I can just be helpful, hopefully, in putting them in like a policy, like a broader, fitting the examples within a broader framework of how are we doing this poorly and how could we do it better.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering, I know that you probably have like limited time, Eric, so like tell me whenever.
I got a couple more minutes, and
okay.
then I should probably try and take a shower.
I'm sure were you door knocking all day?
Yeah, I launched a door knock at 11 with the park board, and then launched another one with Aisha at noon, and then I was out on the doors until like 6 or so.
Okay. I was out for just a couple of hours, like over on the north side, not before.
Were you out for E?
I'm sorry.
Were you out for
E? Omar and oh my God, I'm gonna forget the woman who's running in Ward 10.
Marvina.
Yes, Marvina. So
I love
Omar,
Marvina.
we were a joint with Omar and Marvina as well. So
Marvina's wonderful, and her story is like so incredible. I mean, it's heartbreaking what happened to her family, but her work to free her brother from prison is like, I met her at the convention and she told me that story, and I'm not that emotional all the time. Like I'm a policy wonk, you know, I'm like up here a lot, but she told me that I was just like totally floored that she fought for years and years. I can't remember how long her brother was in jail for, but like it was like over a decade or something. And she got him freed. I think that's a tough one, that race.
Yeah.
But I hope she'll be back again.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm really, I mean, like we're, 3 days away from it now. I'm really curious to see how this election is going to turn out. And you and I were like talking a bit about this on the phone and like how, like what I'm wrestling with in terms of like where I'm landing with the mayoral race. But yeah, and we're not going to know on Tuesday. Obviously, like it's going to probably be like Wednesday or Thursday before we have like a definitive answer in terms of like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last question I would ask is like,
sure.
Like, I'm trying to think of the way I want to phrase it. Like, yeah, I think the way I want to phrase it is like, I have not yet voted. Like, I think I'm waiting until the last minute because I feel really conflicted, obviously at the top of the ticket. But I am voting on Tuesday, and I'm sure a lot of other people watching are probably maybe not have yet voted. And I'm wondering, like, why should they vote for you?
Good question. Well, I think that, ultimately, the city's fiscal health, like the strength of our budget and the value we get in return will determine the resources we have to invest in our needs, in the needs of unsheltered folks, in the needs of our youth, in the needs of our park system, all these things. I, as a BET member, won't be making all of those decisions about where the money's spent, but I do trust my partners in the city council to do a good job with that. And I also think that I will have some ability to push things in a more human-centered, sort of productive direction. I think we need people who care about funding those things in this role of the BET. And I don't think that there is a more pro-public investment tax policy person in the country, honestly. I know people who do my kind of work in other states, and there's a lot of people who are probably smarter than me, maybe more strategic, etc. But I think that in terms of being very serious about funding the things and the opportunities that we need for our communities, I do think I have made a very I've had an impact on that conversation here in Minnesota over my 5 years here, and I think this role would help me push the city in a positive direction. And certainly I like both my competitors in multiple ways, and I don't think any of us would be a disaster. But I don't think that like either Steve Brandt nor Bob Fine would bring the same sort of energy and relational experience and creativity that I would. And yeah, I think I'd be pretty good at it.
Awesome. I'm really glad. I'm really glad we were able to like make this work. I feel like if someone's like, "Hey, Amber, what is the board of estimates?" I'm like, "Okay."
You think you can answer it now?
Okay. Okay. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay. I'm asking you the questions now.
Okay.
What's the BET?
So okay, the BET they set the property tax rate. And they do something with bonding. I don't know what bonding is, but they do that too. Basically, like they're the people that like figure out how taxes work and like look at the city budget and try to make those things like line up and figure out like how we invest our taxes and our money to like fun stuff.
I think you got it. I guess honestly, I gave such a long answer when you first asked it, but basically, it's like the city has a property tax levy and the park board has one. And the BET comes together and says, okay, how much can property taxes for these two boards go up in total, in a given year? And then they say, okay, yes, you can issue debt and bonds to fund that infrastructure project, or no, you can't. Those are the only two things that we have official power to do. And then, like I said, it kind of is like an unofficial, like bully pulpit for talking about these different issues.
Okay. Because it feels like you're like a trusted source for talking. Like you clearly have the knowledge and expertise to like talk in detail about like tax policy and how that funds public investments, right? And so then like unofficially, like when there are those conversations happening, like you become a part of that, or like you sort of have influence in that way as well.
Yeah, I would hope to. Yeah. And I like again, it's been like I've never ran for office before. I never thought I would, and then just like this role was like, oh, that's perfect for me, and we kind of need someone to run, and it would be interesting, and I can do it, whatever, like within my job is flexible enough, I can do it. But it's been a weird process. Like in some ways, I've really enjoyed going out and campaigning, but also like it's important, like you can't let your enthusiasm get ahead of your abilities or your knowledge.
Right.
And so, I think like I want to continue to communicate about issues and perspectives on the platforms that I've built throughout the campaign. But I also I'm not going to go out there like just popping off with a bunch of hot takes all the time, just to keep like the channels live or whatever. Like there's going to be, like a learning period and like public engagement is very important, like knowing how people are feeling about things and whatever. And so I'm excited to wrap up the campaign and hit the books, frankly, and learn more. Because like once I started campaigning, I like didn't have a ton of time to like study like stuff that I don't know everything about the city budget, and so I'm excited to like get back to that kind of stuff, which is very important to how I'm going to actually do the job well.
Right. It's like the campaigning is one part of it, but you're like, no, I actually literally care about like public investment and I want to do that. So I'm going to go away and do that now that I like after like, I'm going to say if and when you win, like you're like, I would like to go do the thing you guys elected me to do. Okay. Bye. Like with input as well.
But I do want to, and I would love to do this more. This is so fun. Your questions are excellent. Do you do a lot of these lives?
I've been doing them more like recently. I think it's like a really cool way to to talk to people, right? Like it's like they're like I obviously like meeting people like in community, like in person, right? Like it's super, super important. And I think it's like a both and, right? It's like and also just being like, oh cool, like I've learned a bit about tax policy just like on a random Saturday night, with someone who's on like the BET, right? Like I think that like is really important, and I think it just like provides an avenue to like talk, because I think so much of like government and politics like feels opaque and feels like it's like shrouded in mystery, and it's like it even sometimes even for me, like right, even someone who's like deep in the weeds, and like I think that like doing stuff like this where I'm like talking about politics in a way that feels like accessible to people, I think has felt like really important. So I
agree, and that's one thing I've been saying on the campaign, and I think it's even on my website. Is like I want to talk about our city budget in a positive and relatable way.
Okay.
And I just like think it sucks that the only thing you ever hear about taxes is that they're going up and it's awful.
Right.
And you never hear about like the decisions we're making. Like, sorry, there's like so many examples of things that frustrate me or that I find interesting or illustrative that I've thought about and learned about over the course of the campaign. And another one is like saving, I can't remember the exact amount of money, but like at certain points, the Parks Department has made decisions to save money by closing rec centers like an hour or 2 hours earlier. And it's like, you look, they're saving like less than $1 million over the course of a year. Right. And it's like families, like an extra hour every day of operations could mean so much. Like, you know what I mean?
It could literally mean life or death. It could, it literally could mean that.
A family that like, you know, struggles to, you know, entertain their kids in a constructive way, or to like find like a nice comfortable place to be and relax, like to have an extra hour of that every day, like compared to like every taxpayer saving like 50 cents, you know, a month or something like that. It's like, we just make a lot of these decisions where we make them because people think, oh, like, what's it going to look like if this number is 0.9 instead of 0.7 or something like that? And then we don't think about the trade-offs we're making. I don't know, like, maybe this one is not the best example because I know not everyone likes to go outside when it's cold, but like, we're closing ice rinks. And it's like, you guys, the water freezes in winter. Like, is it that expensive to keep the ice rinks? Like, is it really like, I think that's like a wonderful, charming part about Minneapolis is that we have these community things that we can all just go out and do, especially in the winter when it's like hard to see your neighbors and stuff. And like, we like, okay, so we're going to save everybody. Yeah. Again, like a quarter every 2 months or something. And we're going to lose, you know, access to these investments that make it a more vibrant city that give us opportunities to connect. And I think that's a bad deal for the taxpayers.
Right.
And I want to help.
When a better option might be like, hey, whatever shitty technology service provider we're contracting with we haven't talked about, well, we talked about this on the phone.
I know your work is.
I work for the state. So like, okay, we're contracting for this shitty technology that probably doesn't even work the way we want it to, but we're closing rec centers? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like,
yes, exactly. And oh my God, we talked about the contracting out, but the IT contracts are, oh my God, they're fucking crazy.
Criminal.
It's just like, because we contract out. Okay, this is sorry, I can't stop. We're gonna be on this. We're gonna be on this TikTok live for like 6 hours. No, but like, sorry, just like we contract out to these tech companies because we won't raise the money up front to invest in our own technologies, and so then we have to outsource everything because we don't have the technology. Oh yeah, I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
This book, Eric, you literally.
I know it's on my list. I know.
This is the book for you.
Yeah, they talk about all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, like this book. It's for folks who can't see it. It's Recoding America by Jennifer Polka. It addresses that version.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want to read that one. Did you dive into the abundance thing ever?
Yeah, I listened to it on audiobook. I mean, Ezra Klein.
I thought it was the dumbest fucking shit. I honestly couldn't believe it because, like, Ezra Klein, as much as he sucks, is not an idiot. You know?
Well, and like, I mean, recent evidence would beg to disagree.
Okay, fair. But, like, I kind of feel like Ezra Klein has been interested in a lot of people that I've been interested in.
Yeah, same.
And like, so like, I remember like Heather McGee wrote Some of Us, and I was like, this is so important. Yep. This is such a big part of what I'm always like, what we talk about.
No, you talked about swimming pools earlier. It's exactly that.
Yes.
Like, exactly that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that example of like our challenges, especially in Minnesota with the Minnesota paradox and our racial inequities being so high here. Some of Us is a very important lesson for people trying to understand our political economy here in Minnesota, in my opinion. But so like Ezra Klein like had her on early on and like saw her as an important, interesting person. And that's happened like several times where he picks up on authors that I'm like, yeah, you kind of get to the right questions.
Right.
But then I read that book and it's like, I mean, first of all, your analysis is very thin, and I don't think it's like a very substantial work. It's very much an airport book in a derogatory way. But then, but then also, your goal, your vision is so fucked up.
Yeah.
Like a techno, like hyper consumption society. Like I felt like there would be like in the year 2040, you're eating plastic for every meal. And it's like, but you take a pill that keeps you from getting cancer. And like, it's just like, you guys, like your vision of what a good world would be is so, they start that book off and they're like, satellites are orbiting the earth and shooting down genetically engineered meat. And I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Like Ezra, I'm like, it's like he'll come to the point, and you were like, okay, you're almost there, and then he's like, well, what if I just went off and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I feel like Ta-Nehisi Coates like was looking at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I feel like that's what we're all saying. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Okay, I saw that exchange was happening, but what did it go down on Twitter or was it an interview?
No, it happened. It was so the backstory is like after Charlie Kirk was murdered.
Okay.
Ezra Klein published an op-ed in the New York Times, the title of which was like Charlie Kirk was practicing politics in the right way. And
I saw that. Okay.
Wax poetic about that. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a piece for Teen Vogue in which he was like critiquing Ezra Klein and this sort of like white logic around Charlie Kirk, and then Ezra Klein had Ta-Nehisi on the podcast, and like they released it not just as audio but also as like there was like a visual recording of it as well. So like it was like two pieces of writing that they both write, and then they actually like spoke in person.
Okay, got it. And that's where the exchange. Okay, so I gotta go look.
It's the same sort of logic he's expressing in Abundance, which is like it feels divorced from reality. It feels just divorced from reality. Whereas like you're like, no, there's like here are the practical we can look at the world that's in front of us and fix those problems.
Right. Which is sort of like, you know, my first job was in like at this like research think tank, and at a certain point I took this turn towards both more state and local than federal, and also more political than research. And I think in some ways I have this like axe to grind with those guys, because I'm like, it only took me a couple years of doing like think tank type work to realize like I'm just kind of like, it's just like this like intellectual masturbation, and you're not really like engaging with like implementation or social change or lived experience or any of these things.
Right.
And like, I'm not saying there's no role for that, but like I just cannot imagine an entire career spent being a gas bag like Ezra Klein and just being funded by a bunch of rich people. And like, I just think that like, it's kind of, it's just like, so seeing him like make this whole career off of these like half-baked, like weird ideas is just like, it's kind of fun to watch him like fall from grace. And it's, you know, I think, you know, and it like happened to Malcolm Gladwell too.
Oh, fucking Malcolm Gladwell! Oh my God.
But you know, like he was like a thought leader for a while.
Yeah, he was, and now he's unserious. Yeah,
and then he just did it a couple times too many, and he never deepened his work. He only broadened it,
right.
And then it was like, okay, man, like now you're just kind of like a crank.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Ezra Klein. I'm just like, brother, and he was talking about running anti-choice Democrats, like bro, like talking like part of what a lot of the conversation with him and Ta-Nehisi was over was like Ezra Klein was essentially like, well, we just need to kind of throw trans people off the bus. That seems what's popular, right? And Ta-Nehisi was like, no, we don't. We just what do we believe in, and we need to stand and run on that. And Ezra was just like, well, no, but we need to win. And so if throwing trans people over the bus means winning, then let's do that. And it's like,
right. And like And who cares what winning means as long as we win? Like, what are you talking about?
That was his entire art.
We live in a we live in a late capitalist social collapse fascist state, but we won. It's our name on the banner. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
Yeah, that's correct. So
yeah. Okay, all right. Well, this was like so much fun, honestly. This was a great way to end a long day on the campaign trail.
I'm really, really glad we were like able to like make this work. I'm gonna vote for you. I'm gonna rank you number 1. I'm super excited.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And I'm really now excited to have an answer to like what the BET is.
Yeah. Spread the good word about the BET, and let's keep talking. Maybe once I'm in the swing of things, we can do like city budget updates or whatever.
I would literally love to do that. That'd be awesome.
Okay, cool. All right. Have a good night.
I think you have a power button. I think you just like tap it.
I see.